Okay, looks like we're live. Oh, Hamitaku yapi. Chante washte na pe chija papalo. Makasi tomne leo yuha kina hunka hunkichi api. Ake hochoka hunkina shi. Uh, Good, good evening, my relatives. I greet everybody with a good heart and a handshake, and we come here to remember what it is to be a good relative again to each other and to everything in this universe. And I want to welcome you to the third part in a series of presentations Oyate Hotai is hosting. And so I want to thank Oyate Hotai for being the voice for the people and bringing opportunities to the people to come together in peace and harmony and to learn all new information for the betterment of ourselves and our family and our community, our tribes, and our nations. And at this time, I have the pleasure of introducing Wichakpi Koyak Hokshila. He wears the stars, otherwise known as Richard Movescamp. Uh, Richard is a fifth generation Lakota healer, a highly respected elder, tribal historian, and spiritual leader. He's the great great grandson of Woptuka Chips, the Wichashawakan holy man who provided Tashunka Wheatgo Crazy Horse with guidance and medicines of protection. He's a tribal authority on Lakota history, culture, and religion based on 5 generations of ancestral family memory and a living oral tradition. Mr. Move's camp and his family have been pivotal in the preservation and revitalization of Lakota religion and spirituality throughout the 20th century. He's a well-known, highly respected elder amongst our people. He would have what we call a PhD or MD in the indigenous way of life, but he also holds a master's degree in mental health counseling and with an emphasis in behavioral health from Sinti Gleshka University. In other words, he's a success in both worlds and someone I highly admire as a human being and practitioner of our Lakota ways. He holds the belief that the mind is sacred and that maintaining a sacred life includes caring for one's own mind as well as one's own spirit. At this time, I want to humbly welcome my Lekshi, my uncle, Richard Movescamp.
Thank you, Tungska. Thank you, nephew. And I want to thank Oyate Hotai, their staff and the organization, the board members, and all the relatives that made this possible this evening. I want to say good evening to all the people that are listening. And it's we come a long ways as relatives and descendants of our ancestors. And today, all walks of life, we can pray together and we can share knowledge with each other. But most of all, we able to cultivate and enhance, empower our children to be healthy children, our future generation, our relatives all over the world that are raising children, grandchildren. I'm very thankful that our ancestors kept some of our cultural teachings, the knowledge, and all the ceremony people. We have many spiritual leaders today and cultural and spiritual teachers throughout the country. Was very, very thankful that in that term we come a long way. It wasn't too long ago where we thought our way of life was going to be no more. We were taken, we were not allowed to practice our ceremonies. We were not allowed to speak our language, and we were forced to worship a different creator. But our people never lost sight. They never lost their loyalty to their own God, Wakantanka, Creator. And we made it this far, that it was because of their sacrifices that they have done years ago, centuries ago, that we're still able to find each other. And in the new generation that we are in now, we're able to still hang on to some things that were given to us by our ancestors, the values and teachings and the rituals that were part of our culture. And most of all, the terminology of Wa'unshila, our compassion for life, our loyalty to our Creator God, and the honor of walking on the earth. As the ancestors teach us that when you walk on this earth, you walk with mindfulness, because the very soil that you walk on is where your ancestors are buried. Your loved ones are in the ground. The very soil that the people that we love, four-legged, the winged, our relatives are buried in the ground. And we remember them as we walk on the earth, and we honor our people. We've been through some very difficult challenges in the last few months. More ways to remember our ancestors. It brings us back to our own spiritual being, the well-being of our Tatsha, Iksewi Chasha, Kamahel, our inner being. It brings us back there because that is our true home, Lakota Wichocha. Then the language is Lakota Wichon. The Lakota Wichon, you translate that as our ancestors' peaceful way of living, which is the main core of our spirituality, is mindfulness and understanding that was given to us. And we never lost sight of that. So I remember a lot of our relatives that passed on their teachings, and they knew that they were not going to be around forever. We remember our parents, our grandparents, our loved ones that left early. So today, every time we come together like this, virtually or physically or anyway, we remember our people, our loved ones. And we don't say they died, but we say they went on a journey, another form of dimension that we will see each other again someday. So today I wanted to start out by remembering the people that lost their loved ones, the people that are lonely and depressed, having some difficulty during this pandemic, people that are in the hospitals, and people that are still out in the streets, in the alleys and street corners that are caught up in the illusions of what a colonialism is in our world. So my prayer today is to remember all the people that are suffering, the children that are hungry for physical food or love or parenting, they're hungry for a belonging. En fait, tu que le coca or kankanka makasi domnia ompi or na umshu chalakte. Tu krekte woke akije ikwaka na okuje tibek dachpapi or na umshu chalakte. Or kankanka na euchaktrishnion. Hey, we tell you podcast in our okay, we chose on we tell you shukta, chechichilo kamkashla. Or hitchetulo, mitaka yasin. My relatives throughout the country are probably sharing the same challenges, that someone of their loved ones, somebody they know is in the hospital because of the pandemic. or because of the oppression, the things that are happening around the world. People are locked up, people are still on the street. But those are the times when people can to remember your spiritual God, Wakantanka. When we pray and we remember these times, what we pass on to our relatives is that what we received, and then we understand it, and then we pass it on to our relatives. So some of the teaching that we received hundreds and hundreds of years, the sweat lodge, the Inipi, that was around 1450. The sweat lodge was given to us by a woman nation to help ground and build a man, Wichasha Gagapi. To use, she was given instructions by some beings from another world called Tunkan Oyate. Tunkan Oyate is a spirit people, that another form of people, beings that were come from another world, that came to the place, and they reached out to a woman, and gave her instructions and the terminology about the Tunkan people, the Tunkan. So he says, when you see these stones in the middle, you will remember us. They represent us. So meaning that it's not really the rocks or the stones that are Tunkan, but they are representatives. They represent the creator, God that brought us the value of the Tunkan Oyate. So they built a sweat lodge to clean the spirit of the person and to be able to define, our men are going to be able to define the role of responsibility to enforce and lead a way of life. The concept of what is a man, what is a wichasha, lakola wichasha. So they gave us a language. And the language that we speak today in our own indigenous culture, the Dakotas that speak with D dialect, and the Nakotas and the Lakotas, we're all related. But just because there are so many of us that we were divided in 3 different areas of bands of Lakota, the Dakota, Nakota, Oyate, the language. And our ancestors used to call it the Okashpe Yamani. Okashpe is divided into 3 different areas based on the language. And the reason why the language is so important is because the language goes back millions, thousands of acres. The makoche, the grass that you see, and the trees that you see, the air, the water, the language is originated based on the love of the God that gave us the animals and the relatives, the plants and the trees. Our language is associated to Maka. So prior to 1450, there was originally language was the Dakota, and then they divided into 3 different parts. But the meaningful, the definitions and the language is the same. And at those times, very early times, the language was very wakan, it was sacred. It was the key to the spiritual well-being, the language. So at one time, people like the great-great-grandfathers and the grandmothers that had the original language, the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people had their own alphabet, their own writings, and they were based, the language, the dictionary, and the knowledge, the key foundation of our language is based on Unchimaka. Unchimaka is the writings that you see, the old ancestral writings on the walls of our canyons, and the messages that were left behind by our people from thousands of years ago. The tree, the chan, wakan, and everything that is all related the cedar, the junipers, the pine, the cottonwood, all the trees that grow in this world, no matter what the geological areas, they're all related somehow. And then there's life in them. And they said that their language is very close to the Lakota language, the language that we speak, and the trees and the water and the animals speak very similar to our language. This helps us ground us. So along the years, before we received our rituals to keep us as a human being, the language Wolakota Wichoye was passed on through us to the fire, to the teachings of the water, the values that we look for in our everyday life, which are the authenticity, the original language that was given to us by the ancestors is kind of different from now, the modern language that we speak. And that the writing that we do, we use the Washichu alphabets to describe our language. But if you spend your time understanding the language and the sound and the tone and meaningful, you can see why our indigenous people, we used to have our own alphabets. But someday those will come back. You know, the life of the circle of life never ends. So that was the basic understanding that our history and our connection to Creator God and what is a spirituality, what is the spirit way, the foundation of our spirituality. Today, anybody can learn a language. White people, a different nation, Black people, if they put their hearts in it, they can learn our language. And we share languages to be able to share our way of prayer. Today, in the modern world, we are all related and we're all connected to one another. But the spiritual teaching, the love of life from the old ancestral ways has never changed. It's always Wakantanka Umshilaka, the people. So that was the foundation teaching why the Swat Lodge was given to us. Then around the 1500s, the Hamblecha, the mindfulness and the meditation concept was given to us to ground us, and they call it being with your dreams. The being with your dream is basically meaning that you're within your own spirit being, your inner being. So people went on the hill alone, and overcome your fears. And you realize that you were never alone in the first place. If you're sitting by some trees, the trees have languages that if you go deep within yourself, you will be able to understand what the trees are saying. And you understand what the water, the beautiful songs that the water sings as they flow through the earth. And the roar, the thunder beings, when they roar through the echoes of the skies, you can see the animals and our ancestors, our forefathers and fore relatives. Their voices are in there somewhere. So our spiritual connection is how deep you are within yourself. And the key to find those things is to Hamblecha. The Hamblecha was the ritual that was given to us. So for a long period of time, our ritual of prayer was only with the Inikaga and Hamblecha. And then as the years come, there was another one about Hunka, the making of the relatives. But the terminology, when somebody asks me, what does Hunka mean? What does Hunka, making the relatives? The story goes in deeper and deeper. The Hunka means painting your body, using the sacred colors to paint your body, to describe who you are as a character and what your role and responsibility So it was said that the tattoos that we wear today was original people, the indigenous people have invented the tattooing, the marking of your body, which the meaning, hunka, is paint. That's what that is. And so when you, over the years inside of hunka, when you make your relatives, you put your marking on that person you adopt as a relative. So that's why they always use hunka, to tying a plume, tying a feather, given the Indian name, Lakota name, and that is your spiritual name. So hundreds of years ago, every person had a unique name given to them by ceremony, and the name has a lot of meaning to it. And then as we come along, the wiping of the tears. The wiping of the tears is that dua washigala, the wakipcha. When somebody's suffering from losing the loved ones, the mourning and grieving can be really complicated in the human world. You can suffer for a long, long time if you allow it, that you can go forever. And it will really, the idea of suffering will change your way of life. And if you don't heal from mourning and grieving, it will give you a different person. Your character, it will affect your character. So our ancestors knew that, and Wakantanka gave us instructions to put a number on how long we should suffer, because it's an illness and it became a dangerous. It's also a healing. So the wiping of the tears, when we lose our loved ones, we of course we mourn deeply, and there's nothing in this world that can be measured against the mourning. When you lose a loved one, the difficulty hits you right in the center of your soul, your heart. You're in double out for a while, and then they give you water. They wipe your tears, and they pray with you. So ceremonial medicine, tobacco, sage, and smudging, and they feed you. They feed you with traditional food, and they bring you back into their circle of life. And there you will put the memory of grieving into a very sacred place in your soul rather than suffering, but you hold it honorable. So the wiping of the tears came around 1750. And around those times, the women were very considered sacred. And we Wakha, the sacred, put together, the woman has a special place in that society, in that role. So they ceremony, very strong ceremony that was given to our people. So there was a 4-day ceremony with the Ishnati ceremony, and the women were given special instructions that would become aware the important role and responsibility about what woman, our foundation, because what makes the woman sacred? Somebody asked me that. I remember my grandfathers describing why it was wakan, and why we have womanhood ceremony is between the human beings, the women were given a special God when they were born. Other than the human spirit, they also carry an additional spirit, guardian angel, that is given to the girl. And the girl, when the girl becomes a woman, that guard angel starts to work and protect and clean. The guardian angel, all they do is protect and clean the woman. So every month, the certain part of the moon, the woman will cleansed, there was recycle and continue the life. And the new generation, the generation of human life, comes from a woman. So those are all the synopsis about why the Wiyas Wakhan. Today, many women forgot that role. They forgot their identity, the role of a Wiya. But lots of women are starting to turn around and become the role of important. So that was the ceremony. And then it is the life that we live in was given back to us. The woman renews the life that enhances honoring the woman. So they have another ceremony called the throwing of the ball. Kapa Wankai Api. The circle of life is a special made ball that a woman will toss to the crowd to celebrate and honor the roles of the responsibilities of the Wiya. And then the last, around 1800s, the last ceremony ritual that was given to us was the Wiwang Wachipi, the Sundance. And today we still carry that. And so those are the rituals that we know it's very sacred, all 7 sacreds. And like Sewi Chasha, the common men and the women in society gave us some laws that we have to hold on ourselves. We hang to it. That's laws were the ones that carried a period that helped us preserve our culture and language. The spiritual laws, the magic laws that was once given to us, our ancestors never lost sight of it. And they say that when you pray, you always make sure you pray that you don't lose sight of the sacred laws, the Lakota Oyate. So those are the ceremonies that were given to us. And then the first creation story was that Wakantanka gave the Oyate the fire, the human world, the fire, Chetaki Wakan. And when we light the fire in our ceremonies, it reminds us that God is the greatest. Wakantanka Ate Yota Wakan, the greatest. And then the Unchiyamaka, the Mother Earth, the tobacco that is the plant, herb that comes from Unchiyamaka, the tobacco is a second creation ritual that was given to us. And then the third one that you gave us was the chanumpa, the pipe that was given to a family. And the family's role and responsibility was to preserve peace amongst the families, the Lakota Oyate. And there's only 2 values that came with the pipe. The 2 values and the 2 teachings that we should never forget is that the pipe, the first value is to protect and pray for the Wichong Chage, Wichongchage is the generation that will never end. So meaning when you say that generation, you pray for the children, the sacred purpose and life, the wealth of the nation is based on the life of our children. And that it still stands today. From hundreds of years to today, the foundation of our future, of our life, the purpose of why we are in this world is to secure and protect the well-being of our children. And that's why they gave us that pipe. And the second value of our pipe was simply to preserve families to stay together. In order to have a healthy child grow in society, the mother and the dad has to work things out, do the best they can to have an honest, good relationship and stay together. The family must have a mom, the child must have a mom and dad. Those are the values that was given to, those are the only purpose why they gave us the pipe. So 100 years ago, there was a woman that took care of the pipe. And I think her name was Bad Warrior. Bad Warrior. She never left the side of the pipe. She always stayed there. And from what I heard is that she used her power to delegate a commission, some men and some women. And he had them make a replica of a pipe. And with that pipe, this commission journeyed throughout all the nations. The first nation that the Lakotas made peace with, the relatives, was the Shahila, the Cheyenne people. And then the Phalani Oyate. Phalani Oyate is the Arikaras. They used to call them the Ree people. The Ree people. And then the Mahpiat Chola, the Arapaho nation, the Hadassahs. And the nation goes down the line. In over several years of generations, this commission, when one gets old and passes away, they replaced a new one. But the commission never died for a while there. But the woman, the grandma stayed together. And this commission traveled nationally and internationally. When there was no automobiles, they spent days on the road, on a journey. And from what we heard, they even went to Central America, South America, Mexico, and they made relatives. And they made a foundation that by the time the Lakotas has made peace with the relatives, there was over 400 tribes that the Lakota, the woman, the calf pipe, had made relatives with many generations, many nations. And they have committed themselves to come to visit the territory every so often. And when they gather at a special place, they bring a symbol of the Tongan Oyate, a stone that they carry and they place on the ground, signifying the unity of the indigenous community, nationally and internationally. The pipe carrier, the pipe was so strong that it brought 400 nations together back in the early days, before the Washichus ever came in our country. And they was on a journey. And she was very old, but she kept that promise. And today, a lot of people have a chance to see the medicine wheel in someplace in Wyoming or Montana somewhere. It's still sitting there. But that was the foundation of you people uniting together, all nations, to bring stone to remember their prayers and their gatherings. So that was the history of our people, why the medicine wheel was there and the purpose of the pipe. And Originally, along those years, there were only 7 Wakawi Chashas in this whole Teton nation. The Tiaktuan Oyate, the 7 fires of the people, the Benihoru, the Ogalala, Sichangbu, Sisituan, all of the 7 campfires were united together on the nation called Tiatuan Nation, Teton Nation. We were one people, and we were a strong nation at that time. We didn't divide into different bands, but we were all connected with one another. And so when the whole entire place, the Lawakawi Chashas, the medicine people, was one of my great-grandfathers was Wofducha. And there was a Hechaka Wapia Wichasha. And there was the buffalo healer. And there was the Shunka Wakan healer. And there was Hihan Wapia, the Iktomi, and there the Uipi healer. There were 7 original medicine men on the whole entire Teton nation. But they were really well-hidden people. So when our ceremonies were under siege by the government, many of these holy men went underground, and they remained underground. So a lot of those medicine ways had disappeared, and the medicine people became invisible people. Lakota people, Dakotas, they never revealed or identified their medicine people, because when that happens, they witness other medicine men from different tribes get prosecuted, or they're killed, or they disappear. So the Lakota Oyate, the society that the Teton Nation was living under, was called the Buffalo Model. Katanka Oyate Kawichong Yechil. The Buffalo Model was the foundation of the Tioshpai, the foundation of our families. So when you look at the buffalo, the children are in the middle, the female cows, the Pte Oyate, the bulls are out in the front lines around the circle protecting. And our life was supposed to be that way. The men had an important role to protect our people. And the women were the sacred beings that are center of our life, and our core sacred beings are children. So the models, 2 similar models, the Buffalo Nation and the Ixtewi Chasha Oyate, which we were attacked through this foreign government to assimilate us. So during the time when all of these rituals that I mentioned went underground, and they were suppressed in the hidden way, and a new way of life came into our society. At one time, back in those days when I mentioned when our rituals and our medicine people were strong people, every male head of the family, when they get married, young man gets married, has his own chiwahe. He was given a wapkaha, the headdress, the wapkaha. Some people call it war bonnets, but the proper thing to call our headdress, wapkaha, which means that you're the head of the family. So at one time, there was a normal being that every family had wapkaha that was given to the newlywed. And their responsibility is a high honor to protect the family, to look out for the well-being of their children, and be honorable, the whole of values. But along the way, when the government came into our lives and our way of life changed, 2 things that happened. They stripped the identity of the Indian male, and they took the wapkaha away from the the males. And they only gave it to the people that had the role of what the Washitas called the chief, the head people. And they gave that back to them and said, okay, you can wear this. The government will recognize you because you're a head chief. But the common men that wore these headdresses were removed. And that still kind of happens today. Today, when we're losing in the colonial society and we live in a predominant world ruled by the government, only the head man wears the war bonnet, the headdress, and which makes it easier for the government to identify who to come after, who they come to attack. And they ruled it because they sold the concept of the prince and the kings and the queens concept to the European, and they try to place it on us over here. So they put it on who they recognize as the head man, the Girish. And the rest that try to do that, they'll prosecute you or they'll punish you. So the medicine men that were there, that had all these medicine ways, went underground, many of them passed on to the different world without passing on these other teachings. And the ones that we have left today is the one that branched off to the Yuipi life. And there's no other medicine, the elk or buffalo or Iktomi or Sunka Kanwapia or owl. They're pretty much gone throughout the history. And today we have the healers that practice the Yuipi ceremonies. So that's how we kind of only of our society. There's a lot of them today, a lot of spiritual leaders and medicine men today. But the healers are very limited. But we have many spiritual leaders, which is a person that is a teacher or singer or helper or educator, lives a sober life, and can be called a spiritual leader. Yeah. So it's come a long ways in all aspects of the Lakota Nation. So during those times, that cycle in the early days when the people were faced with a similar illness, the pandemic in 1918, the Lakota life that was given there, people have died worldwide. Millions of people have died back then. But many Lakotas probably died as well. But what kept them together from going in depression or anxiety attacks is their spiritual well-being. The spirituality is what saved them. And it is up to the people today to seek more education. When I say education, I'm not talking about a college, university, or anything. Education is know your history and know understanding, know more about, educate yourself about the history of the people, your ceremonies. And the more you educate, the more doors will open for you in that world. And the more you will want to learn about your language. So it's never too late. We come from today in a modern world. We are very fortunate that we have young people that are interested in spirituality. We have young people that are interested in the way we live our life, the daily life of our spiritual well-being. And they always say, what is Lakota spirituality? It is the person you are, the circle that you carry in your body, called the inner spirit. You're in the true individual. So we never built churches as indigenous people. We could have, but we didn't. Our ancestors, they look at Unchi Maka, the earth is our foundation of our home. The soil that we walk on is where our ancestors are buried. So we honored the land. We never claim ownership to it. We just live on there until we go back to the earth too. So with that, the person, the exterior chasha is your church. Your own body is your temple. Your heart is your heart, and your soul is your altar. Your body is your domain, your church, your temple. Your brain, your perception that you carry is your guide to your creator. And our ancestors that were brought these ceremonies to us, their inner beings were solid rock. They're solid, hard as a stone. Compared to us generation today, because of the life of the Holocaust and the colonialism that we lived in, our inner circles are very fragile. It's like a paper or like a sponge. Every little thing can take you off and break your circle because of the substance abuse that our generation was infested in, the drug abuse, and the horrors of life that our people experience. Even the buffaloes experience colonialism, where they almost kill all of them for just being a buffalo. So you can't really blame yourself for being weak in that area. That was meant to be that way. But it's a personal challenge for all of us today to build what all these teachings and make your center a hard place, a solid rock again. That is the ancestral teaching. Today, our generation, we're the ancestors. The future takojas, the grandchildren, are the future. We have to find a better life for them. We have to make sure that they continue the teachings. They don't have to start all over, and let them know what our people have went through. So a beautiful human being, all walks of life, not just Lakota, but all races of American people can come together and continue to pray and teach them the right thing. Go hand in hand. Peace, compassion, love, understanding, and mindfulness is the new generational teachings. No hierarchy in our ceremonial ways. We're all part of a circle. So when we kind of misunderstand those, we create a hierarchy, and our people believe that the chief system is way up on top and the normal people are way on the bottom. But it doesn't work like that. That means that if you believe that, you probably should revisit yourself again. That is not a rightful teaching. We're all part of a circle, and we all should share and help each other have the great understanding. So those are the overview of what spirituality is. And today, if you look at yourself, one of the things about spiritual way is to pray to take back your self-worth and self-esteem. Never look at yourself, never beat yourself up over things. Be proud and continue to your journey to help one another. Even if it's one person in your life, help them and be a great person. Deep inside, we have a mask. Today, they want everybody to wear masks. But our indigenous people, we already wearing the mask. The humans already have a mask on, but you can't see it. The mask that you put on today to go on in public, smiling and being a happy person, but inside of there, you might be suffering. Your other mask, underneath the mask, you might be really angry or depressed or really not happy. So your inner being, you can fix that. You can fix those by being real, but reality in our ceremonial ways. So there's so many things to learn about our ways. I encourage the young generation to be courageous and be all the best, because they've already paid the price for us, our ancestors. We back years ago, generations ago, our families, the government and the Christians and the Indian agents came and took our children away from our families. Imagining yourself today, what if somebody came to your door and said, "I come for your child now," and you have nothing to do, you have nothing to say about it, you know. They forcefully take your children, will be crying for you, but load them up in a bus and they haul them away, never to be seen again. That's what happened to our people. But that today, if you look at that, you can say that's a historical trauma. But if you look again, stop and look again, that was a sacrifice that our ancestors paid, that today, our ancestors that went away for school, and some died at the school and some made it, but the horrifying experience of the history, you turn that around, they made the sacrifice so that our people will continue to receive proper education. Many indigenous people graduated from universities and colleges and PhDs, and many more that we will graduate. We're not the last. But we have to remember our ancestor that paid the price for that, the child that was taken away, the families that were broken, and they were sad because they lost their loved ones to the educational world. So you have to respect the concept of education. Our ancestor paid the price for us already. So you really got a value. You have every reason to go get that education in the white man's world and both the Native American world, in honor of those people who had suffered and sacrificed. That is our journey. That is a spirituality that we have to live for. There was a time when our ancestors were given alcohol, the bad medicine that destroyed families. Over the past years, since the 1900s and to the present day, 2003, there were over 35 million people that passed away all across the Indian country. Nationally, internationally, 35 million indigenous people died of alcohol related through the highways, or suicide, or murder, or rape. All the worst thing that you can think about, the horrifying thing that happened to the indigenous people that happened hundreds of years ago and today is due to the substance abuse that was given to our people. Many people lost their loved ones, their dads and their moms, due to alcohol that they still grew up without the proper love, and they had to work really hard. Every person has a relative that had some problems with alcohol. So that is a common social enemy of our people. Our ancestors, the spirit gods that come to visit us, they tell us we have an enemy too. And you ask them, what is it? It's a substance abuse that you fell in love with. That is our enemy. We see it destroying your people. So the spirituality that we live on today, you know, with some of us recovering and suffering, you feel bad about yourself, but don't feel too bad. Because you don't know your language, don't feel bad either. That was meant to be that way. The government, on purpose, they took our language away. On purpose, they took our culture away and broken our families. So the time is now to heal. The time is to heal throughout the country and revisit everything that you went through. Because we are so busy trying to survive. Most of our times we live in a world of misperception. We misunderstood something. We just took our spirituality, the basic teachings, and we ran with it. But there's much more than that. We got to stop and let's revisit our ceremonial ways and restore the proper teaching to our people. So I'm going to turn it over to my nephew Micah. Micah is a young spiritual leader coming up there. He's educated and he's doing a good job. Also, my kola, Tom LeBlanc, is Dakota is a great job teaching people. And that's what I call spiritual leaders, because they teach the values of our people and continue to help our younger generation. So I'll stop there and if any one of you want to say a few or answer questions, or I'll do that right now.
Thank you, Wopila Lekshi,
Oh,
for your time and your wisdom. And I, you know, I have nothing but honor and respect for you, and you know, you're one of my biggest inspirations, you know, for even getting my education, seeing that you could do it, and I I am honored to follow in your footsteps, you know, being educated in our Indian way and also in the non-Indian way, um, to, you know, for the betterment of our people. And I just want to, you know, say thank you for your time. Thank you for your sharing. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you to Laura and Tom for doing this. And I hope everyone listening take something away from this message and uses it to create or enhance yourselves and the people surrounding you. You know, you enhance them with life and health and happiness. Oftentimes we're looking for the newest trends or newest theories or newest therapies in health and wellness, but I've often said that maybe our answers aren't in the future. Maybe we only need to look back to the old ways to uncover old information. Because the elders said that we would in the future discover old new information in a time when the world is full of uncertainty and imbalance. We need to remember healing and wellness comes from your teachings and traditional ways. We got to remember that the words spoken by elders are medicine to be passed down for the benefit of our future generations. Because like Nickey was saying, somebody paid a huge price for all of us to be here. So we honor our elders because they are generous with knowledge and wisdom. And generosity is one of the most important virtues and values amongst our people. So, you know, in the spirit of generosity, we're not stingy with what we know, with the knowledge that we have or the wisdom that we've learned. And with that, I just want to say, you know, please feel free to repost this presentation and make sure to like and follow Oyate Hotai's page. And once again, thank you to everybody for being here. And Doksha Akewachi Ankite. I'll see you again, and like for more talks like this. Thank you.
oh, or
Uh,
still. Yeah.